Welcome to the Simply Be Found Huddle, where you get Dean and Rob, and we're talking about everything business and marketing. Today's huddle is going to be about websites and not how to design a website. Well, kind of, sort of, but more of the principles behind a website, what a website means in 2025, or at least at the beginning of 2025, and what business owners should know about that website piece. Dean, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and I think that's a great point of, as of today, this is how websites are going to be important because we've seen some major shifts in the last year that it changes how websites are discovered and the value of them.
Websites have been like a ping pong ball or a pinball machine bouncing all over. I mean, you got the e-commerce sites, you got, everything that's out there where they were a business card. Now they're not needed. Now it's all this data is being collected from them. It's been all over the place. Sorry, I got some.
Oh, I thought this was unedited, man. You just muted yourself.
That's not edited. Everybody can see I just did that, so I coughed through everybody's ear because I would blow out their eardrums. But it's one of those things to where your website, the biggest complaint I've ever heard about a website is that someone spends all this money to design it, and they're still not getting the results they're looking for. And then some web marketing company comes up and says, well, you need to spend more on ads. And now you're spending all this money, and that's your primary piece. But they have a beautiful website.
They do, especially on desktop. Let's just jump into that real quick. Because I've seen some beautiful stuff on desktop, and they don't work on mobile. So there's kind of the cart and the horse thing when websites are involved, with getting people there, and then once you're there, to close the sale because you have a good message. So I don't know, in your opinion, what's the most important piece of a website? I mean, we've talked about different pieces of it, but what do you think is the key point that you need to make sure is done with the website in the design and the development of it? What's your thought?
There's a few concepts I would do. So it used to be where I would say, hey, it's a mobile first design. And that was during, the 2008, 2009, when mobile phones started really picking up. Now I really concentrate to where it starts with a data first design. So it all starts with your data, having a good sitemap, having a good structure, knowing what pages you're going to have, answering common questions that the business gets, which means having a communication of what that all is, because that business data has a lot of meaning, has a lot of value. Your next step would be going through and designing that out inside of a mobile first design. So your design looks good on mobile, because most people have access to everything on mobile.
Let's clarify something real quick, because you said data first. Data first content. I mean, people get those two. I mean, they're the same, but they're not the same. Data content. Once you break that down a little bit in your thought process, because I mean, a lot of business owners hear both from website designers. Content.
We would joke all the time that marketers want to confuse people, and they use names that mean the same thing. So in this context, data and content mean the same exact thing. Okay. You have to start with all of your content inside of there. That's going to be your data. The other data that's going to come along with that in your design is going to be your business information. And when it's getting developed out by a developer and actually coded out into being a website, that's then where the data even takes a different structure, because that content then turns into a data piece of schema and makes everything kind of come together. Because the problem with marketing is everything is all intertwined, and it's a great, big, huge, giant mess.
Right. So you talked about, so now we were talking about two different kinds of data or content. You're saying what you and I physically see when we look at it, and then there's the kind that's in the backside that provides the information so that when a search happens, it links to your website. Is that what you're saying?
Kind of, sort of, yes. I mean, that's where the schema is.
Yeah, but your schema is
where you start first. You have to start with the content first. Right. And I just got done talking to a restaurant, and they're like, well, I'm going to send you pictures of all my menu. That doesn't work, because that picture is, yes, it's content. Yes, it's data because it's an image. But all that stuff that's on that image has value as far as content. So you have to put all that actually in your website. You can't just put an image up and say it's good to go. If that was the case, we would design all websites inside of Photoshop, and it'd be one image.
Right. But you still have to have somebody that really knows what they're doing when they're coding, because we had one website that somebody coded it all out on the schema side, and it was just basically data stuffing of a list. So I mean, you got to be. I mean, yes, there's schema, but it's not good schema. I mean, it's like
There's
getting
good and
mad
bad to
that
every piece. You can
right.
overdo it. And I would say that's where Schema has a spam score as well. We talk about that for your local listings all the time, but your website also has a spam score on it. As if you're just stuffing and throwing things out there and you're not using natural language, you're going to kill yourself.
Right, and what they were doing is they were stuffing it on the schema side or the programming side, and instead of there's different ways of approaching that. And I don't want to get technical on that, but that's where your web designer needs to make sure that they understand some of the rules of engagement, if you will, with searches. Do you agree with that
Yeah,
statement?
I would
Okay.
agree with that because the website is kind of that big, huge hub where it goes out to everything else. It has to look good to be able to convert, but yet the data has to be right how it's planned out. So when I'm writing content, the reason why I call that data is I plan that out. I have my keywords, my natural language piece, what people have searched for, all that stuff all comes into play. So and AI has made it a lot easier to be able to do some of this. But looking at the data side for what people are searching for, how they're searching for it, why they're searching for it, what common questions do they ask, all of those things play into your content that's on the website side. So that's why I would refer to it kind of as that data side.
Right.
But then your design has to be good because you have to get them to convert. So it has to be appealing to the eye, has to walk them through the problem, why you're a good solution, and be able to tell them all that framework has to be in place. That's why it's so mixed in there. So when we look at everything as a marketing piece, is that tree piece, you have all of the data side for all the listings engine piece, which is your root structure. Then your website coming up, it's because everything kind of flows up into there. So you have to take that information from those nutrients and bring it into that trunk. So that way that trunk is good, stable, and strong so that it can get enough branches. And as those branches bring nutrients back down or bring customers in, it goes through the right funneling process.
Gotcha. So so I agree with you on the structure of our tree, but the thing so getting the data started first, and all your content, that's a big deal. But I can't. You kind of said that you didn't think mobile was as important as it was a few
No,
years ago.
mobile
I
is. So it used to
misunderstand
be
you.
back in the day before you did anything, you did your design first and you started mobile first design. But I think you have to work your content first, then work your mobile design next.
Okay, so the structure is the content. I think that mobile should be more a higher priority in the design process than desktop. I mean, they're both
Yep.
important,
For most
but the
businesses.
way, pardon?
For most businesses, yes.
Okay, and e-commerce is a whole nother animal, but we don't even want to
Well,
go there.
e-commerce is mostly mobile.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But I mean, as far as the design of that, I mean, you have to put all that content in there as well. So there's value to that content for the e-commerce side as well. So in the as you're developing the whole thing, let's put it this way. I'm trying to think as a business owner, the questions I've gotten asked is, okay, I'm giving you the content, then you give me the first design. No matter who you're using, there should be a wireframe, if you will, or a first design layout. Wireframes aren't as important. I guess it depends on the designer what their process is.
It depends on their process. I would really say probably if when we are restructuring off our website design or anything that we're doing, we have that coming out. If you want to talk about it, hit us up in chat. But it's one of those things to where I think it's better to go through, work it from the data side, take it to the content, take it to the WordPress engineers for how we do our process, and then get feedback. We have an entire tool that does the whole markup.io is what we use, and it allows us to get real-time feedback because now you're working directly with that WordPress person to be able to make those changes. There's no in-between person inside of there. And if they need to bring the design, if it's a total wrong design, it doesn't look right, then they bring the design person back in to tweak that design. So you have your very first mock-up, should be a live website ready to go and get that feedback on there. I think that is where technology has changed us to.
Okay, so now in the let's talk about the development of your content and natural language. That's so important. I think a lot of people get mixed up on that. Making sure they're you know about your keywords and all those things, but it all needs to be worked into the natural language in the
Yep.
process as well. I mean, I really feel that sometimes that gets lost, that people get so hung up and saying, I do this in this city. This, I mean, there's some points that are there, but you don't want to just do a list of things. And I think that's our bullet. So if we do a list of things, are bullet points a negative or a positive or a neutral, in your opinion?
Neutral.
Neutral.
I'd say they're good. The reason why I love bullet points is most people come to your website and they're going to scan the website.
Right.
And I like bullet points for that reason. It's very scannable, but I like some context to that bullet point that's underneath, because I think that brings in the content side. Because you also want to have enough content in there that brings that natural language, and bullet points aren't natural language. They're a thought.
Okay, so bullet points are more of an aesthetic value to the human eye or the person looking at it, for if they want they're getting their overview of it, and then they can deep dive more if everything's there as far as the closing process. Okay.
Because I mean, when we go through, so we look at a website, the human nature, it doesn't matter if you're looking on mobile or desktop, you're going to look at it on a Z pattern and keep that Z pattern all the way down. And you have what's above the fold, below the fold. So you want to be able to take them on that journey and walk them through. So to their brain, you got to get it to process it through, so it brings value for why they're staying on your site, and bringing value to them to why they want to become a customer of yours.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to do.
Right.
We struggle with it. We haven't figured out the secret sauce for something we found yet. Because the problem when you're doing it is you're trying to go to so many different types of people that you're not going to be everything to everyone.
Right. So
I get the complaint all the time that, well, your design isn't as pretty as this person over here, but mine converts. And for what drives traffic to the site, so that way you're getting that traffic, and it also is converting. So do you want a really super pretty high-end website, or do you want something that actually is going to produce the results you're looking for? Right. That's still a problem today.
Gotcha. But I wanted to go back to the Z pattern thing. That's not new. That's been in marketing forever. Above the fold, that's an old newspaper term. I mean, the way you present information has not changed, but the way that the searches happen is, I mean, the way people find you has changed, but the way you want to convert people with the website or in a visual tone is still pretty much the same. But mobile is more of a scroll thing, so that changes a little bit, but you still have to have the story. I mean, you don't read from left to right. Typically, it's usually up to down. So do you lead with content, or do you lead with images? Typically, what do you?
Both. Depends on the brand.
It depends on what you're selling or what your process is. I mean, but I've had arguments with people, some of our members on their website. They said, "Oh, I want this beautiful picture." I said, "Well, the picture didn't make me want to scroll down." Maybe it's
you know what really drives me nuts on a website is when I get to it and it has a really super busy background. It could be a video, it could be a picture. It's really super busy, and I can't read the text.
Right.
And I think as the older I get, the more that drives me crazy, because I have to then take calories. I have to take time to try to process that information and process that piece, which is huge.
Right. Well, you and I have had those discussions before, because
we have,
because I whether the text should be white or black, if it is busy, that it really depends on which your message is and how clear it is. But I agree with you. A lot of things that are busy with a real heavy background with an image in the back. I mean, you can change the transparency levels to help things, but still there's busy things. Movement on a website. What do you think? There's more value to converting with movement, or is it static? Or I know, again, it depends. There's no right or wrong answer, but
yes,
in general.
And no. I mean, it depends on who your target market is. If your target market's a younger generation, movement's really going to be big, because you have to keep them intertwined. You can also get into the psychology piece of a website and say that the movement can help, because if you bring things in, say, for example, you have it float in paragraph 1, bullet point 1, 2, 3, and you actually get your timing correctly, where they had time to process naturally of what it said inside of there, and then you're giving it, now you're entertaining and you're bringing information up and allowing the brain, you're controlling how it's processing that information.
Okay, because I see some websites that there's so much fly in, fly out, fly in, fly out that I get distracted and it's too much. I mean,
That's where they overused it and they didn't put the psychology piece into it.
right.
I think a lot of web developers struggle at that. I think a lot of UI UX people, which is user experience, basically how you experience a website, they don't take that into consideration of how the brain processes that info. It looks pretty, it looks great, there's all this movement, but you just lost them because they have no idea what that was.
Right, and the message and the message and the story on the website again is so important with that movement. I mean, you've got to get people to read to the next level, basically.
You
So,
do.
and that
And if you don't bring them in to get them to read, you're not going to get them to convert.
right. So somebody used the term, use it as the slippery slope. I can't remember what author it was that wrote that.
I don't remember.
But he brings in classes and teaches people how to write, copy and that kind of thing, where you try to get people to read and then you want them to read to the next level. Well, if you read something and you stop, then you haven't engaged well. So that takes time to learn that, don't you think?
It's a talent.
I mean, there are people out there that do that, but it gets hard. We even struggle with it at times. We think we got this great thing, and then I didn't understand, so I quit. It's like what?
Correct. I mean, we get that all the time. I mean, it's one of those things to where it is a process that's in there. So one thing during this last year that I've really, actually last 6 months, even 90 days, I've come to really understand what our team is really good at. We're good at being able to structure that data. We're good at being able to come up with that design, that psychological piece there, and we're able to process that information. So as we're working on our new version of all of our marketing materials and going to release out that website piece, we're going to be bringing that piece majorly in to the picture of how that process works, because tying into your website and making it a good trunk, when you're looking at it from the tree analogy of those roots and then the website and then the branches and all that, when you look at that side, you can bring things in to where you can improve your voice search. You can have service areas to be able to bring that content in to be able to make it to where then you can structure the data once it gets over to there. So I'm going to change my words from the very beginning. You're going to start with content, and then they're going to work the data into that content as that site gets developed. And as that kind of starts to structure out, it goes through a whole entire set of tools to be able to make sure it has SEO, has all those pieces to it. So it has those right data points. So that way you're able to drive traffic. You can work with that root system because now it can pick up, it can confirm information. And the more you're confirming those networks that this is information that is correct, you're going to get better traffic, which then now if you have the psychology piece there to your design, you started with mobile first and then have the desktop as a secondary piece, and you control that psychological piece of how someone comes and visits a site, you're going to be able to walk them through the process to do it. Now, does every site have a huge psych level to it? Not necessarily. If you're a car wash, you have a lot less. They're just looking at what services you offer. It's a boom, bang, bam, done. But if you're a contractor, that's a huge piece. Right. Like if you're a roofer or painter or whatever, you have to bring them through. And where a lot of those guys mess up is they'll go through and they'll start sending out all these pictures, and people have no idea what the hell most of those pictures even are. They want to call them part of their portfolio. I mean, yeah. I don't know which one was it before. I don't know which one's after. So there's all those pieces that you have to think about as you go through and you structure your marketing if you want to be able to get the best results, in my opinion.
All right, so let's talk about images for a second. It's kind of, yeah. What do you think is? I mean, a lot of people don't understand that there's information behind the images as well. That's part of the data structure, if you will. Yeah. But what so that's a whole nother. What you want to dive into that just a little bit and talk about the importance of that?
Well, you have a few things. You have XF data, which is the data of the actual image itself. Then you have also your HTML data that can be put into there, which would be your alternative image text, which is telling the search engine what it is. And what it's kind of about, it's used also for someone who can't necessarily see a picture or colorblind and they can't make out what the picture is. There's a lot of stuff that comes there, but that brings some value in. That's been there since the 90s for what that is. The XF data is usually data that's collected when the picture is taken. So if you take a picture of the skyline of Denver, Colorado, you're going to have the date, the time, the kind of camera it was used. You're going to have the location. You're going to have all this stuff stacked up on the back end of that data. That does bring some SEO value. I wouldn't rate it as high as your schema data around your FAQ section or something like that by any means, but it does bring some SEO value.
Excuse me. So you said if somebody takes a picture, what do you think about using canned designs or stuff that's been developed by other companies or using AI for creating data? Or images, I should say, not data, images. Is there more value to your own images or pictures that you have versus using canned stuff like from some of the places where you can buy images? I mean, I see it out there a lot. I guess it all depends on what you're trying to.
Depends on. So it's usually a combination. I mean, it depends on what your website is and what you're trying to sell. I mean, you can't use other product images of a product that you're selling if it's not your product.
Right.
So if you're an e-commerce store, you got to have your products. If you are a roofer and you were talking about past projects, you might have a combination of stock photos and being able to do those stock photos to where, that's just your pages. But when you start talking about projects, you can't use that stuff. You have to have actual projects that you've done. The pictures, all the information that comes with it, everything in there, you have to make sure it's there.
And along that line, if you are using other people's stuff, make sure you recognize their intellectual licensing, that you're not violating any copyright laws. I mean, I've seen some people get in some trouble over that, doing some things. So it's important that you're not just grabbing things that are not yours to be using out there as well.
Copyright lawsuits are all over the place, especially with some of these AI images and some of this new AI content. I mean, that's going to be an interesting piece to watch as far as being a web developer.
Right. Okay. So you're saying that, so when you said that, I hadn't even thought about that. So the people that develop the AI, do they own the rights to that then?
No, but they're using concepts from designs that are already out there. So there's designers that are currently suing these AI companies that are generating images or content because they're saying it infringes on their copyright. Which I mean, I'm not an attorney when it comes to that. I've never studied law or anything. So it's one of those things to where you got to really be careful and make sure that you're thinking about that and going, hey, does that look like anything I've really seen? And does it pass that limit? I mean, most of the time it's not. But if you say that you want it to copy exactly this image and it does it's probably going to be a problem.
Okay. That I just wanted to bring that up as a point to consider.
I mean, we've had people, I mean, I have a picture of myself that's a cartoon version. We had competitors putting that up on their websites.
I know, and we filed against them as a matter of fact, because they're using the images that don't belong to them. And so
I mean, our legal team loved that.
Yeah, that's always fun to have those. I'd much rather be on the giving side than the receiving side.
Right. But I mean, they straight up just took it straight off our website, which I've seen web designers do. They take a picture right off another person's website and never paid the license for it, never did any of that. So, I mean, you have that whole piece when it comes to images.
So let's talk about that a little bit. I know that there's programs out there or with plugins or whatever, where they can actually go look at an old website and pull it forward a little bit. Is that a good practice if somebody's doing that? It can be. Okay.
So there's tools like Reloom. There's UI design, something like that could do some of that stuff and can actually come up with your sitemaps and your mock-ups and everything, and then it attaches that and sends it over to Figma. So when you're looking at it from a more advanced level, but I mean, some of those things are really good. I mean, it gives you the structure because a website it's no different than going and buying a template. You just have to then turn it into yours from there and bring your color scheme in and everything into it. But I mean, you could do it. And I think that's one of the big things that's changed inside of web design. I mean, we're going to see some interesting stuff. And by the way, I've got a prediction to make as far as web design goes.
All right, let's do the all seeing Rob. Let's do that. What do you
All right. So my
prediction, Rob?
prediction on website designs is I think that mobile view, we say that should always be mobile first when it comes to the design. I think you're going to start seeing more mobile websites function and act like it would be a native app on your phone. It's not going to be a native app. You're still going to be in the browser, but it's going to look and feel like a native app.
I'm not sure what you mean by that for sure.
So a native app. So like if you load up a app on your phone, you know how it has a different function and a different feel to it?
Okay.
It feels more natural being 100% mobile. I think most websites are going to feel the same way, that this was designed for mobile and it functions and it feels like it's supposed to just be 100% there. Like it was made for my phone.
Gotcha. So, how do you think designers are going to react? If let's say they do that, you have different. We have what? How many different models of mobile phones out there? Do they have to take into account all that stuff?
They have to take into consideration of size. So there's lots of different sizes. There's lots of different pieces there.
But I'm sorry, what was that?
There's lots of different sizes. There's lots of different pieces that come into that mix. So, I mean, yes, but that's all part of the responsive design. We've been doing that for years.
Responsive. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. So we've been working that inside of the entire mix for a while now, for several years, as far as web design goes.
Gotcha. Perfect.
Because you got to remember,
I know we've been doing it, but I don't think that always business owners understand when they're working with if they're not working with the web designer, to make sure that there's certain things that they know needs to happen as well.
I think that's a big piece for how web design has changed in some aspects. Because, I mean, if we talk about web design back in the 90s, it was a lot easier. You had to worry about a desktop. You had to worry about load time, but everybody was either on a 14.4, 28.8, or a 56K modem. And then cable modem came out. And the next thing you knew, you had all this flash stuff and everything was moving and doing all this crazy stuff. But I mean, if you look at web design over the history, it's always had that one piece. And then once mobile phones got to where they were, now it's even worse. You have to worry about mobile phones. You have to worry about tablets. You have to worry about watches. You have to worry about, how does my site look and perform if it's going to be on a TV? Does it work on a desktop? Will it move up and down? Will the images be crisp? Will all this stuff go into play? And how is someone going to surf it? And how are they going to be able to go through the motions to get all this done? You have so much stuff there to be able to think about when you do the design. And that's some companies have made it really well. I mean, Wix does a decent job at doing design. I don't think they structure the data right. And some people don't have they have the right tools in place, but a lot of people don't know how to use it to be able to take it to that next level. GoDaddy has stuff. I mean, there's all these builders and everything that are out there. And I think that business owners have hit the point to where, yes, if they don't have it in their budget to pay someone to come in and really do it right, and then understands that psychology side and understands the data side and understands all those pieces, they're better off than hiring some person who thinks they know web design, go into the Wix and just design it themselves and getting that base and that very basic stuff in place, in my opinion. Do you agree?
I agree with you. I agree a bunch on that, what you just said, Rob. The other thing, too, is there's some other things, some security issues. When people are having sites designed, I've seen people do site design. How do they protect themselves, making sure that their site is secured, their certificates are all correct? Is that a concern with the web design piece, or is that something above and beyond? What's your thoughts?
So some big pieces to that I see businesses make a huge mistake. They give ownership over to their web designers or their domain. You should always control your domain. You should always buy your own domain. It's a hit by bust theory. So if your web designer is the only person that holds that username and password to your website or that domain, and they get hit by a bust tomorrow, you're screwed. And you don't know where to go. And that is a huge part of your business that could totally screw you over. So I always believe that you should always own your domain, be in control of your domain. You can give management access over to somebody inside of there, but always own your domain. The next piece is always have access to the back end of whatever they built in. If it's WordPress or whatever builder they use, make sure you have that. As far as site security, there's all kinds of stuff that goes into how all that works. For me, I'm a big believer in using an SSL certificate that's free. There's a lot of stuff out there, and I just totally through my mind of what that is off the top of my head. I had it just a minute ago, and I'm gonna forget. But there's SSLs that are free. You're going to have a domain provider that tries to sell you a lot of stuff as a business owner. So you got to make sure that you realize they're trying to upsell you on it. You don't necessarily need all of that, but you can have that there. You can have all that piece. So make sure that you have that in there. And the other thing is, I think every business should also have their email address for their website as well. It's not expensive. I like Office 365, but you can do Google Workspaces. You can do all that, so that way you look professional on that side. I also think that everybody needs to be the admin when it comes to their email. Hit by bus theory. Their computer guy gets hit by a bus tomorrow, they're screwed because now they can't make changes to their entire email environment. So, I mean, there's all these things that kind of stack together for how you're going to build that out. And I think that's where having a coach that's going to be behind you to be able to go through and make sure you're checking all those boxes is huge. Now, when it comes to, hey, what should I make sure I get from my developer? Do you have a checklist on that? And if you're a member of Simply Be Found, any of our membership levels will tell you exactly the checklist you need to follow.
Right.
Actually, I might make a blog out of that now that I say that.
You know, I think that'd be a great thing to do, because I think, you know, whoever you use, you need to make sure all the bases are covered, and you know, make sure your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, because it will make a difference if you have anything that's out of whack, and it's not exactly where it should be, because the algorithms aren't necessarily forgiving if you're doing anything wrong, and that's a big point.
They're not. And the big thing is, I've seen a lot of things in my 30 years of doing web design, or my 30 plus years. Man, I felt old.
Yeah, you're getting older by the second, buddy.
I'm older than when I first started this 31 minutes ago. But it's so are you. You're aging quick too.
My runway is getting shorter though. Yours is, everybody's is, but
well, you never know. I might have a shorter runway than you.
Right, I know.
But I mean, it's one of those things. I've seen a lot of stuff in 30 years. I've seen people lose control over their domain. I've seen people, not be able to access their website, and to where they didn't realize that if they did something, it ended up hurting them. And that's probably one of the big things that, why we have these huddles and why we kind of talk at things at random like this, is because we want to share the knowledge with different business owners of all the aspects you could do. Now, some of our podcasts, like this one right here, or our huddle, I guess I should say more than a podcast, some of it ends up being to where it's a little more random. We bounced all over the place, but we hope that you're going to be able to bring a lot of knowledge from what we're talking about, because there's some key points there. How you work with your data, how you go through and how you should be structuring your website, how you should, have those ownership pieces. I think these are big pieces for business owners to be able to make sure they're following.
I agree with you. And since we're not scripted, we kind of just start one direction and see where it goes. So
half the time we don't even know where we're going to go,
because we may not be in a linear progression. So I think, but hopefully everybody gets something out of these huddles that we do. So
I hope so. And if you guys enjoyed this huddle, definitely do it. We'll probably have to dive into websites a little bit more. I think there's a lot to talk about. This brings, I could go on and on about website design, but I'm not sure anybody would follow past where we are right now. So
yeah, well, I'd love for one of our members or somebody out there to say, hey, would you look at my website and let's talk about what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. I'd love to have that. I don't want to call it a roast, because I don't want anybody to think that they have horrible. Everybody has something good in their site, but we can say this is what you can do to improve it to help yourself. So,
yeah, I agree 100%.
So anyway, Rob, thank you. I think it helped me clarify a couple things, and I hope everybody else got something out of it.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Make sure you make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening to this, and make sure you follow us and listen to more huddles and all the different videos we have. If you're not a member of Simply Be Found, come check out simplybefound.com, where we help businesses get found and drive traffic to their business. So thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you.